Just drop a preemptive like as well, because the first one was really informative, so I'm looking forward to this, actually. All right, let's go.
Hey everyone, Lost here. Sorry for
Let me know if the audio levels are good.
I definitely didn't get sidetracked by a certain game dropping a new roguelike iteration packed with juicy lures. Anyway, here's the part 2 of flyk's review on Endfield. As mentioned in part 1, this part dive into combat mechanic, and it should be a fun one for anyone who eager to talk about dodging
okay.
and more. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, it covers AIC and the factory gameplay. I'll leave a link in the description.
Great video.
Now let's jump right into the part 2.
猜到这对吧？而我们接下来要讲的便是游戏里的另一个重要核心——战斗玩法。在玩法方面，周末地采用的是策略战斗玩法。该类玩法中知名的有《异度之刃》系列和《最终幻想》部分作品。我们后面便
For me as well, it says Final Fantasy VII Remake here. I genuinely, sorry to pause the video straight off, I genuinely think this game would be serviced quite well having a Gambit-like system that's in Final Fantasy XII. If you've ever played Final Fantasy XII and you've experienced a Gambit system, I think it would work so well in Endfield, personally.
会以《异度之刃2》和《最终幻想7重置版》作为主要的参考对象。简单来讲，相较于以角色性能操作为核心的动作类游戏，这类玩法大幅减弱了角色在动作性能方面的操作需求，转而将游戏重心移至了对技能搭配与释放时机的考量。那么，与我们前面提到的两个系列一样，周末地的战斗也采用了多角色同屏战斗的模式。在一侧中，角色的技能由普攻、小技能、大招、被动组成，动作部分则只有跳跃。战斗中，副控角色会自动找位置对敌人进行普攻，但当你切换角色或使用技能时，会立刻将主控角色与目标角色进行换位。虽说副控角色有一定的减伤，但这种角色粗暴换位的行为很容易在实战中把远程角色换到前面去挨打。其次，最关键的地方在于游戏的核心机制为
That there is where I genuinely think a Gambit system would be great, because you could set units to act passively, aggressively, have units target specific enemies on field in regards to highest health, highest damage, all that. If you've played the system, you know what I'm talking about. It's actually a system that can be quite dynamic, actually. There's quite a bit to it, obviously, as you start to unlock more gambits, and I genuinely think this game would really do well with a system like that, and it would lend into us going down a more heavily class-based gameplay style as well, because you could really make classes that you're not in control of, that are doing their AI thing, work the way they're supposed to, and then that in itself could generate almost subclasses, because you've got different units. You can have presets and have them doing different things for different fights, right? I think it would be really cool, I do.
变种的元素反应，这在很多时候需要玩家滚技能打爆发。可在这种切人机制下，那真是人都给你切晕了，搁这不易游戏打死活的都是。除此之外，另一个很大的争议点出在了闪避上。由于角色只能跳跃，除了那些确实是让你用跳跃去躲避的攻击外，敌人绝大部分的攻击你都只能通过走位去躲开。但问题就出在了这里，虽然我们的动作性能低了，但敌人的攻击欲望和性能可不低啊。更要命的是，这其中绝大部分的攻击都会将角色打出硬直，连招追着你锤的到处飞的敌人也不在少数。那这里就出现了矛盾的地方。
I do think that though is where kits will come in to kind of negate that though as well, right? Well, you would hope anyway, right? Because we've got to take into account we haven't got fully fleshed out rosters as well, which is going to like change certain things going forward.
你说《异度之刃2》没有闪避，那是因为敌方的性能也非常低，玩家除了专注技能连招外就没有别的操作压力。你说 FF7 敌人性能高，那我方有闪避有格挡，你想摆烂玩甚至可以全程格挡硬等技能。可周末地一侧的体验就多少有点自我拉扯的意味在里面了，主打一个上不去下不来。那么等到了二侧，由于一侧对闪避的呼声太高，为了适配新机制的增加，制作组干脆直接重做了整个战斗系统。简单来讲，在本侧中依旧采用了多人团战的设定，但战斗取消了手操技能时的实缓机制，转而是改成了自动瞄准的顺发。当你使用副控技能时，该角色会直接打断自己当前的动作，并瞬移到目标边上释放技能。如果放技能时就在目标边上，则不会瞬移。同时，角色技能也不再像上侧一样是相互独立的 CD 制，而是改成了全队共用的。
I do like the SP system, though. I do. I'd love to know what you guys actually think about the SP system in general. I actually quite like it. I know some people have said they're not fans of it. Obviously, I didn't play the previous beta, so I can't say how it felt to play. but just in theory, and obviously playing with the SP system, I actually like it. I think it offers up the potential in future for some really cool interactions with kits and characters for like super SP based teams and stuff, you know. I'd love to know what you guys think though.
能量制，一共3个能量条，每释放1个角色技能消耗1条。技能本身没有 CD， 能量条会随时间自动缓慢恢复。角色的最后一段普攻被视为重击，当主控角色成功打出重击并造成伤害时，可以直接恢复大约1/9的能量。切人则变成了单独的按键，不过由于本侧主控可以直接悬丝傀儡副控，所以实战中切人的频率大大降低。
Oh no, he got dropped on that fight. Oh damn. We won't talk about that.
需要切人的情况也不外乎3种：一是主控残血了，换个人来当主控；二是根据作战需求在近战和远程之间切换；三是部分角色的技能会强制把自己变成主控，技能放完了再切回去。同时，本侧的切人模式依旧是直接换位，不过由于实战的切人频率大幅降低，副控在自动作战时也会使用闪避躲开攻击，等于是曲线解决了频繁换位导致的站位问题。不过这里我还想提一嘴 FF15， 在这一步里切角色的逻辑是直接把你要切的角色瞬移到当前角色旁边，相比于周末地的直接换位和 FF7 的实停挪视角，我个人还是更喜欢这种方式。那除了切人，
I think that's a fair take. I think I agree with that as well, actually. And I think if we did have characters playing specific roles, you know, casters playing the proper caster role, and particularly probably being a little bit more ranged, defenders being up in the face, tanking damage, vanguards being a little bit more mobile, I feel like that would lean into that a little bit more as well. You know, rather than switching to a unit you want to do something with and being in a bad position, right? Because that unit's not really built for that situation.
视角切人本身其实也有点问题，那就是由于本侧副控可以悬丝傀儡了，所以技能和切人肯定要被分成2个键。
Do you know what I mean? Like if you're like, right, we need to switch to a caster because we want a caster to do what a caster's doing, ranged stuff, right? And then your caster's in the middle of the fight. It's like, oh shit. Yeah, I don't know if you know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with that actually. I didn't even actually really consider that much now to that point. I see why I really like these videos. The other one gave me a lot of food for thought, which I hadn't really thought about too much. I've thought about, you know, classes, roles and how it should interact with each other and interact with the enemies and the game itself. But I hadn't really thought about positions when character switching, which when you think about it, if we are going to, who knows how the game's going to be when it comes out, right? But if we do lean into like a heavily class-based system, which I hope we do, that is quite important, I think. I think that is quite important because if you are playing as a defender and you're tanking damage, but you need to quickly switch to a caster to do the caster's job, you don't want the caster to be swapping places with the defender. You want the defender to still be able to do their job from an AI point. And then if you had gambits being able to do what you wanted them to do and then switching to your caster, you know, okay, all right,
结果
okay.
就是在 PC
I think that would be a good
上
change, definitely.
数字1、2、3、4的定向切人键变成了 F1、F2、F3、F4。就以我自己为例，因为我的手指既不算灵活，也不是斜剑仙高手，所以打游戏时我基本是只动手指不动手掌。但很显然，我的手指还没有长到可以在不动手掌的情况下去按照 F1、F2， 所以要让我在实战中去灵活切人，多少是有点为难我了。不过制作组也确实考虑到了这一点，在定向切人外还加了一个 Q 键用于顺序切人，即只能从左到右切。你说能不能用 E 键从右到左切呢？啊，不好意思 ，E 键已经被连写技占用了。那你说切人不方便，其实也没啥。可槽点在于在顺序切人下，杰尔佩塔使用小技能时，因为它是蓄力技，所以顺序切人会直接跳过它，定向切人也无法选取。但同属蓄力技的莱万汀就会直接被切人打断。当然，除了切人，在触发连写技时，蓄力下的杰尔佩塔也是无法被选定的，但莱万汀照样会被打断。所以不管怎样，蓄力机制制作组还是得好好调试调试。然后顺序切人这一块，我个人还是希望再加个反向切人的键位比较好，毕竟在很多战斗中还是有。
Yeah, I think if you're just gonna, if because like I didn't really consider that because I didn't really use that often on just character switch. But you do want it going both ways, right? Because that's a problem. Again, going back to the class side of things, if you are doing specific things in combat and you want to switch from one back to the other, you want that to be as smooth as possible, right? Skill issue.
如果我1切到2，再切回1把，还得把3、4都切一遍，万一不小心多按了一下呢，还得重来，就显得特别搞心态。 其次是战斗的核心机制，目前周末地的战斗围绕着2个关键机制展开。第一个是重做后的元素反应，一共分为火、冰、电、自然4种属性。反应的逻辑分为异常、附着和爆发3类。当敌人被带有元素附着效果的技能攻击后，会进入法术附着状态。此时若再被另一个元素附着攻击，则会触发元素异常，并清除法术附着状态。
That's one question I've never really asked as well. What do you guys think about like the elemental reaction system in the game? You know, what do you think? Because I know a lot of people are big fans of the elemental reaction system in something like Genshin. And, you know, we were kind of, and I'm not comparing the game to them necessarily. I'm just talking about the system itself. We were initially was going to go down that route, yeah. But then they decided to go down the attribute route. I believe NTE is kind of doing an elemental reaction system, right? I think you can have a lot of potential nuance, complexity, depth, and a lot of expression through an elemental reaction system if it's done right, right? They could improve more. I think it's weird. You think it's weird, right? Simple but has depth. Yeah, Neo. I think it's good at least he's not just basically all dot. We won't get into that, but I agree. It's a negative status effect, actually.
效果只取决于后一个属性，火异常是持续烧血，电异常增加其受到的法伤，冰异常会将敌人冻结并增加其受到的物伤，自然异常则是持续降低防御力。而在异常触发的同时，前一个属性还会触发自己的。
You know the weird thing is, like a lot of the systems in this game, especially in the elemental reaction side of thing, are kind of like not necessarily working in the same way, but like the actual mechanic that they inflict was kind of things that I spoke about, which I would have liked. I called them afflictions before we ever got negative status effects, and it was even spoke about in Wuthering Waves, and people called me crazy. I still think I was right on that.
附着效果，火附着是异常伤害更高，电附着是额外破条，冰附着是异常的持续时间更久，自然附着是异常的效果更强。但如果敌人连续受到2个一样的元素附着，则会触发元素爆发，造成一次对应属性的额外伤害。同时，除了这4个法术效果外，物理效果还有自己单独的3个异常，其分别为震退、击飞、倒地。当敌人
I used to love using lift. Lift is just I know it's just satisfying. I'm not the only one thinking that there. I love to use lift. I did.
受到任意效果攻击时，会首先进入破防状态，之后再受到效果攻击，才会触发其对应的效果。第2个核心机制则是角色连携技，每个角色的连携技都有各自的触发方式和独特效果，冷却 CD 也不一致。战斗的核心玩法便是研究配对，去尽可能的触发角色的连携技。
That's the bit of the UI that's been improved, yeah.
触发法术或物理效果，以此实现连招的收益最大化。那在讲完了基础内容后，我们就先聊聊整体的实战体验。正如前文所言，作为一个以配对排轴为主要玩法的策略战斗游戏，如果你配对的角色无法相互配合，游玩时也只是单纯的有技能甩技能，当做普通的动作游戏来玩的话，那你的实战体验多少是有点烂玩。
Yeah, definitely. This game is designed in such a way that you really have to just take a moment to look what things do. Look how characters work with each other, how the skills work with each other and chaining and all that sort of stuff. Because the game can go from, you know, it's not just that, like when you're doing it right or when you're doing what the game, the tools it gives you, it's so fluid, it's so fun, it's so satisfying. But if you don't, the combat experience drops down. It's like the game definitely, I suppose you could say it's a punishment, right, of not doing what you're supposed to be doing. If you're playing the game at like half speed and experiencing like 50%, well, not even that, you're just not experiencing what the game's got to offer. And as he says, you can go to a very mediocre experience. And I bet there will be a lot of people who'll be like, not reading, start doing things and be like, yeah, this combat sucks, don't want to play it no more. You know it's gonna happen. You know it's gonna happen.
那问题就在于，在当下的这个大环境里，你说一个新玩家进游戏，发现有平 A、有技能、有大招、有闪避，敌人还猛猛追着我打 ，OK， 这就是动作游戏。然后就要开始灵魂发问之，你这个动作游戏怎么做的这么差呀？你说以《异度之刃2》的动作性能，要是初见能给它当成动作游戏玩的，那多少也是有点神人。而 FF7 虽然动作性能高，但放技能时的时缓和技能演出，也能很明显的让你觉得这并非动作游戏。周末第一册也是沿用了时缓放技能这个思。
I think this is here, like with this sort of stuff, it's a bridge between turn-based and action, right? It's to give that sort of element. Obviously, this is not a conversation about the dodge. What do you guys reckon about the removal of the slowdown and the aiming, and now it going to just purely real time lock on. What do you guys think about that? If you played both, what do you think? Even if you didn't, like, I don't know, because I didn't experience it right. I think the slowdown looks really cool. Like, I like the ability to control what I'm doing, because for me, in a sense, although you don't necessarily get the slowdown for a lot of the time, it's kind of like a lot of skills in like particular MMOs, you know, where you've got omnidirectional control over where you're placing the skill. It adds a little bit of skill into that as well, right? But I've seen a lot of people, right? A lot of people, and it seemed like the general consensus thought it was quite clunky at the time. And then I don't know if it's like rose-tinted glasses after the fact, where people are like, oh man, it's not so strategic anymore. You know, because obviously there's a lot of people who felt like that, and I'm not just talking about Tolbury, I'm talking about a lot of people, right? I don't know where to fall, personally. I don't know where to fall. I feel like this game can do the combat that it's got now and still be perfectly strategic. It's just a fine balancing act, right? Slow down, giving a player time to breathe and think. Yeah. They can still make current builds more strategic somehow. I agree with that as well. I agree with that. Bring it back. Okay. I really like the slowdown bias towards more strategic and slow-paced combat. I don't like the direction towards dodge because it removes that kind of element in favour of fast-paced action. I think it's fine, but it'd be cool if they added back some abilities. Yeah, I think that's the... I think I agree with what you say there, Rosandra. I think there's a sweet spot, right, to have this kind of combat, the game still be perfectly strategic and tactical, potentially go half and half, right? Bring some of that back in for some of the skills, I think. I think that would be like the kind of middle ground, personally. Or, man, maybe just having the option so people can play it that way or play it that way. I don't know if that would be the way to go and people are just defaulting to whichever's the most efficient. I'm not too sure. I'm the type of person, a gamer, right? Options are always good for me. Whatever it might be, as many options as possible, and let me play the way I want to play, kind of thing. At the end of the day, it's a single player game, right? You're not competing against others, so it really doesn't matter. Options are a good thing, right? What's up, Skybird? Auto targeting just isn't your style. That's fair. Honestly, maybe remove the slow but keep the aim. Play it like a MOBA. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like a MOBA, or some MMOs do it as well, right? I'd be cool with that as well. I do like those sort of things personally. A mix of both could be great. Yeah, I think that's where Hypergryph need to go. I think like kind of trying to get it down the middle, but without this attempt to try and please everybody, but just balance. It's a tightrope to walk, right? It really is a tightrope to walk when they're building a game that's designed in such a way, because it is doing something. It's not necessarily unique, but it kind of is. It's definitely unique in this space, at least. Anyway, so I think, you know, they've got a lot of moving components. They've got to get just right, you know? They've got to get it just right. I think if it turned into an option, I think people would just gravitate to the option, plays it for you, and also kind of goes against the point of it existing in the first place. I think that's a fair point. When it comes to single-player games, for me, I just think options. If everybody gravitates to one particular option, that's fine. But the option not to is as well is a good thing. But I don't disagree with what you're saying. That's what I say. I think whatever's the most efficient and effective, people probably will lean into it. But then again, there's always going to be that person who's like, nah, this is just better for me. Yeah, I was just curious to see what you guys got to think about that. Okay.
思路就等到二测在玩家与敌人的动作性能均高、迟缓机制与手操技能删除且战斗节奏连续快速的情况下，你大概率会直接带入动作游戏的思路。
It does have an action feel to it, right?
在别扭的战斗体验下开始怒批游戏，这种由玩家刻板印象带入导致的体验与预期不符。
See, I don't know if I agree with that though. I don't feel like, right, I get it, right, that the game's lent more into action. I guess it's how you perceive like what action combat is and what you get out of it, right? Maybe when I think about it, although I don't necessarily actively think that I would prefer it to go back to how it was because I didn't play it, I'd like to try that, right? But maybe I would, because I don't think this is a mediocre combat system. I don't personally. This is where I've got to disagree a little bit. I fucking love the combat in this game. I think it's so satisfying. But I do understand the opinion of that it's maybe got an identity crisis in what it's trying to do in the combat. That it definitely is on its surface trying to be more action orientated. But then when you look at the systems, they feel like they would align maybe with a less so system. But yeah, I didn't find it mediocre. At all, honestly. I didn't find it mediocre at all. I thought it was a good combat system. As soon as I started playing the game, I was just like, yeah, man, this has got its hooks into me. Like, it really has.
的问题在本册十分严重，这也使得有一部分观点认为，把战斗回调为迟缓放技能会不会更好？这样至少萌新一上来就能意识到玩法的不同。那关于这一点，我个人持中立态度，毕竟单看本册的战斗机制，在玩家熟练配对与技能轴后，整体的爽感还是很到位的。加不加迟缓放技能
All right, okay. So I misunderstood what he's saying there. He wasn't saying it from himself. He was saying that was the perception of some. Okay, all right. I still disagree with that, but I thought he was saying that himself. Just want to clear it up there. I thought he was saying it's mediocre. I think he was saying that was the perception. Okay, all right, cool.
都一样，可如果一定要让新玩家在前期也能意识到玩法特色的话，那其实是可以给迟缓放技能做成一个可开关的选项。
All right. We're on the same wavelength here. I think the option as well. I agree. There's no problems with options. If it doesn't get used, it doesn't get used, right? Who cares? Right? Who cares at the end of the day? If it's there and you prefer it, then it's just there, right? And sometimes you might just feel, you know what? I want to play like this today. I'm always down for options in video games. The more, the better. Okay. We're aligned here then.
默认开着就行。不过你既然都迟缓了，那还可以顺便把伊特的手操技能加回来。这样一来，打开迟缓，手操技能更精确，关闭迟缓，战斗流畅更爽快。玩家可以根据自己的战斗喜好自行选择战斗模式，这样一来不就解决问题了吗？总之，但从机制设定来看，二册确实比一册丰富了许多，整个策略战斗的逻辑也更加顺畅。在熟练之后
，That is what I've heard a lot of people say, right? Who played the alpha though, they do say overall. Minus a few things, you know, the dodge and the slow-mo is a conversation to be had, but they say overall it's just better, right? So, you know, it seems like there was vast improvements across the board, right?
后的体验是远优于上册的，后续配对的开发空间也更加的多样。不过话虽这么说，但在除了核心机制以外的其他机制方面，游戏里还是有着很多影响体验的问题。
Okay, let's go.
说到，那么第一个大问题其实还是出在了闪避上面。在本册中，敌人的攻击性能依旧和上册一样。那么在加入闪避功能后，玩家的性能与敌人持平，理应战斗会更加合理。但在实际体验中，其一是闪避的手感十分软，即便是完美闪避的反馈。
Yo, this is starting to turn into a pre-watch video. This was exactly my main issue with the dodge. I was never a person of get rid of the dodge. The dodge needs to be made better. I said this, right? How many times did I say this? That I felt like I was just mistiming stuff. It didn't feel consistent, right? It didn't feel consistent. The feedback was off. It was just like, I swear to God I was doing that right there, but I got hit. It just didn't feel like it worked 20 to 30% of the time, right? And then I went to other people's streams and videos and I was like, okay, other people are having this issue as well. That was if you watch back to when I initially played it, I wasn't really one for a massive change to the dodge. I was just like, it needs to be made clearly a skill issue. Probably it just needs to be made a little bit more consistent in how it operates. Like
也很一般。其二是闪避之间大的离谱的空窗期。我们知道，在很多游戏中，闪避经常被设定为你可以在短时间内进行连续闪避，但连续数次后会强制进入一个空窗期。可在周末地中，你每次闪避都会进入空窗期，这也使得你没办法通过连续闪避强行脱困，也使得你在紧急情况下一旦闪避失误就没有办法再补救。可能制作组的本意是通过低性能的闪避来凸显游戏的策略，但这
I like that because again, obviously, we don't know what the dodge is going to be like, right? But I do like that because I think it means you have to, you know, you have to make your timing right. You have to think about it. You have to be a little bit proactive. You have to wait to see what the enemy's about to do rather than be like, oh shit, dodge. Which I'm not against. That's just fun as well, right? And you can still use that kind of gameplay in a tactical sense as well. But it definitely reduces the spamming side of things, right? Yeah, I'm cool with that. I like that.
实际的体验，我只能说想法很好，下次别想了。Okay. 第三可能是代码的问题，在游戏中各个动作之间的打断如图所示。
What's this? Here's a picture to showcase all the animation cancelled in the game. Jump. I'm guessing that can be interrupted by jump attack. Can't cast skill or use dodge when jumping. Normal attack can be interrupted by skill. Jump and dodge. Dodge can be interrupted by skill. Jump and dodge attack. Dodge attack can be interrupted by skill. And jump skill can be interrupted by dodge. Right, okay. Did notice there was animation cancel. I didn't Man, some people break it down, don't they, when they're playing in betas and stuff as well.
这
Okay,
么一
all right.
看，我们会发现闪避在这个游戏里，它好像不是最高优先级呀。没错，它确实不是。理由则来自一个更加抽象的事实。
It does seem like when you look at stuff, right, there's a bit of an identity crisis, right? Like, you know, I'm not tripping, right? It definitely does. This is what I said before, the Tolbro videos in this overarching philosophical argument of a potential trying to please everybody. It does feel like when you look at certain stuff, when you actually break it down like this, it does feel like there's a bit of an identity crisis there. You know? I didn't even notice seeing Cam was missing. My brain just auto-filled. Mad, yeah, sometimes your brain does that. It's wild, man. Like, I just must be a fanboy of this game, because even though I do think a lot of this is true, I still fucking absolutely adore the game, man. I do. It doesn't matter what anybody says. The hype cannot be taken. The hopium is still at peak levels.
那就是当你在连续输入闪避和技能时，无论你是先按的闪避还是先按的技能，永远都是闪避先出来一帧后，立马就被技能打断。
Okay.
同理，当你在瞬间连续输入普攻和闪避时，无论先后也是闪避先出来一帧，然后立马被闪避追击打断。而且由于闪避是被打断，而不是直接跳过了指令，所以这一帧的闪避照样要扣除你的体力条。如果你想在短时间内用闪避打断前两者，那就必须再等个几帧才行，不然就会出现上面的情况。那你要是玩过格斗游戏，就肯定能理解我在说什么了。前面的问题叫串招，后面的解决方式叫放帧。然后更高的地方在于，虽然你的闪避被打断了，但闪避的空窗期你该等还是要等。也就是说，你要让我用一个
I didn't know that. Okay. Alright, okay, yeah.
手感
Okay.
软、空窗大、优先级还不是最高的闪避功能，就在一个敌人攻击欲望一点都不逊于动作游戏
I
的
guess this is why they've made changes, and yeah,
当
this
然
is
以上这一些
this
问
is
题
probably why they've made changes. And whether you like it or not, I'd say this is more it than rather than like adjusting the whole combat flow. Is these specific issues here, maybe?
都还不是本册对战斗影响最大的。最大的问题其实在于闪避会打断普攻，更准确的说是会打断普攻的连段。前面我们说过，本册技能改成了共用能量制，那能量除了
That was one person. I was always one of them. The idea that it interacts the chain of attacks. I was always like, especially if well, I suppose now we've got it right. The perfect dodge kind of is in that sense what I wanted. I said that if you executed a perfect dodge, or you did it exactly how you should have done it, that you can get to continue the chain. I actually like that. I actually do like that. I want that to be a thing, right? Because it's just another input that you're doing to continue it, and you can use that tactically. Really, you can.
自然恢复外，最关键的恢复手段就是普攻连段最后一下的重击，而又因为敌人的攻击欲望高，你真想在实战中 A 完一整段普攻可并非易事。那毕竟挨打照样会出硬直打断，所以这其实才是实战中
I suppose this is where kits could be built around this as well to make that happen, though, right?
要问
I don't know.
同样怪物攻击欲望高，同样角色有闪避会被打断普攻，同样自回能量慢，而重击能恢复很多能量的 FF7是怎么处理这个问题的呢？啊
I have this game on Steam and I still haven't played it. Oh, they just add energy recovery on normal attacks.
你他妈的给普攻前几段也能回能量，不就处理了吗？你要是普攻能打满，那是给你抓台名的奖励；你要是打不满，那普攻正常。
Okay, that's a good idea, actually.
没人会有这么大的怨言。而且我们还需要注意的一点是，周末地的敌人锁敌永远优先攻击主控，敌人只有主控不在锁敌范围的情况下，才会开始攻击离得最近的副控，除非有特殊锁敌，不然一旦主控走进攻击范围，就会立马转火，开始追着主控跑，别人不管怎么打他，那都是看都不看一眼。
Yeah, that's definitely something, right? Because like, obviously, the idea of like things like taunts and stuff could change that, but I do think that shouldn't be like. You want enemies to like react in different ways. You want enemies that will specifically, right? This enemy is designed to go after the highest defense enemy, the highest HP enemy, the highest attack enemy. Have that, like say, goes back to the gambit system. Enemies kind of having a system like that as well, right? Where there's a little bit of fluidity in it. So each fight acts differently because the enemy targets you differently as well, right? Because then that will add to specific team building just on how the enemy acts, not just how you're approaching it. because this particular team might not work so well because the enemy's going to do a specific set of things that's really going to punish you. Whereas going in with a different team, you're able to work around certain things right.
而 boss 作为锁敌范围最大的敌人，那你基本是不出锁敌范围的，所以不管怎样都是追着主控打。那 FF7 的锁敌虽然在细节方面和中末地不同，但精英怪和 boss 的技能也确实是优先追着主控打。所以在 FF7 中，除了普攻回能量外，格挡也是可以回能量的，以此弥补主控可能被按着打 A 不出来的情况。不过闪避就没这个效果了。可中末地作为一个只有闪避的游戏，它的完美闪避在本册除了会多个特效外，没有任何额外的机制效果，纯纯的意义不明。那你这不给完美闪避加个回能量，是不是多少有点说不过去了？当然，除了给闪避加收益外，你这个敌人愣头就。
I feel like Hypergryph definitely watched my guy's video, right? I feel like they definitely watched my guy's video. It's where classism had to play their role, not just like simple stats being different. Agree, yeah, agree. I feel like really leaning into the way the class. Again, I hate to keep going on about it. Yeah, I think a gambit-like system would fit perfectly in this game. Honestly, I think it would elevate like the class system if we lean into like proper class roles and you know everything interacts with itself. I genuinely think it could elevate it. And I'll die on that hill. Honestly, I really do. It's probably never going to happen, but I think it would be an awesome introduction to the game.
对主控还是有点太抽象了。那人家 FF7 的小怪精英怪也还是优先打离自己最近的，打起来后也不会唐突转火，不会出现那种
make defenders play the role as well, right? If they can like be drawing enemies towards them,
那么第二个要
allowing casters to play the role in the back.
没有提过的破条，也就是失衡值机制。中末地的破条和大部分游戏一样，都是破条后敌人会进入一段时间的眩晕状态，并且受到的伤害更高。而在中末地里，这个伤害的倍率更是来到了230%。那么在如此高的伤害收益下，按照刻板印象，我们的打法就应该是靠普攻小技能破条，然后留大招和连携技在破条状态下滚技能打爆发的传统思路。然后你猜怎么着？在这个游戏里，普攻是没有破条伤害的，你想破条就只能靠除普攻外的攻击及重击小技能、连携技和大招。那到这你可能也还能接受，毕竟只要我伤害够，破条快，分2套打也不是不行，对吧？然后你再猜怎么着？这游戏破条值的计算，它不是按伤害的百分比算的，而是一个固定值，即每个角色的招式都有其固定的破条数值，而小技能和连携技的破条值大多都是在10点左右，只有个别角色在强化状态下有15到25点，大招数值则普遍在20点，重击数值则是15到30点不等，平均值在20点左右。同时，敌人在战斗中还会使用蓄力技能，蓄力技能可以被伤害类小技能、连携技、大招给打断，当成功打断蓄力后，还会额外造成约20点破条。然后敌人的条有多长呢？首先，敌人的失衡值与等级无关，仅与敌人种类有关。经测试，小怪约有60和80两档，精英怪约有90和100。
I didn't know that. Okay.
160两档 ，BOSS 则约有270和300两档，也就是你光破一个高档精英怪的条，都至少得交1套连携技，再接2套重击和技能才行，而且最好还是蓄力技都给对面打断了。可同等级下能挨你这么一顿打的，基本半条命也没了。而普通小怪或等级低于你的怪，那更是血条比破条先没。至于 BOSS， 你要是少 A 2套重击，尤其是没有额外破条的非物理队，那是真的可以从头打到死一次。
I do think that's something that will probably adapt with. Now, they might change things on launch, right? But I do think that's something that will change with additional characters coming and being able to do that sort of thing, maybe. I don't know.
条都破不了。不过破条除了控怪和伤害收益外，其实还有一个由于破条的难度过高
not physical, what I'm saying.
导致自己的出镜率也不高的处决机制。机制本身很简单，就是在敌人破条后，普攻可以追加一次高倍率的攻击和回复大量能量。不过说是高倍率，同等级戳这一下，顶天了也就1/7左右。再加上本身破条的问题，这个机制已经沦为纯纯的天头了。就这个设定怎么说呢？你往好了讲，是为了避免出现其他游戏里那种破条和伤害绑定，导致低等级过关无法破条出伤的窘境。那毕竟在本家里压级过关确实是不少人挑战自我的方案。
You know, your boy out here, E1 still.
是，所以在周末地里 BOSS 战啥的也没有搞时间限制的那一套，固定破条也算是给了低练一条出路。但是话又说回来，你这为了低练去限制高练，多少是有点舍本逐末了。就如果制作组的本意就是把破条作为全局1到2次的低频高收益机制，那还不如干脆把破条后的增伤全加到处决上去，一刀斩个4分1/5啥的收尾用。那如果制作组还是想把破条作为一个常规的战斗手段，那就削弱增伤倍率，降低敌人的失衡值，或是提升打断蓄力机的收益，至少我打个 boss 一局触发个2-3次总是要的吧。
I genuinely think like, and now whether that'll be a problem that'll come with like meta and FOMO, I think that'll probably be something that gets built into characters as they start to drop, honestly. I feel like that might be a thing that happens, right? Whether that's, who knows how that goes, but I feel like that could be a thing.
紧接着和破条问题大差不差的就是第3个战斗资源的问题。在本册中，大招为充能制，各个角色间独立，而充能方式为连血技和小技能命中后积攒。可连血技纸面 CD 平均都要20秒一轮，小技能被重击限制后本来也攒得不快，那连前置都不快了，大招本身就更不快了。而这也是被很多玩家所诟病的一点，那就是可支配的战斗资源太少，经常打完一套没下一套，到最后只能拼了命的 AAA 试图攒点能量，加之敌人还有蓄力攻击，你正常
I suppose that new dodge is gonna
玩手里肯定还是要留一个技能用作打断，剩下的真的就是除了主副 C 其他人不配吃技能了。那这时你可能会说，我明明看别的 UP 主那技能连的不带停的呀。这其实是因为在本册中装备数值给的极其夸张，在极限状态下你能叠出整整85%的连血技 CD，30秒的 CD 都能给你干成5秒，这使得虽然你的
That was one of the most fun things in the beta, was experimenting with chains combos, right? And getting to a point of trying to cycle through as much as possible and do things as fluidly possible. It was so much fun. That's why, like, I really hope they make that, like, have so much nuance and depth to that going forward with the roster of characters, because the skill chain combos, I think it's such a cool thing. And I can't wait to experiment with, like, a bigger roster and an ever-going roster that keeps adding to that. Like, that's one of the most exciting things for me with Endfield in regards to the combat.
小技能丢不出几个，但只要你的配对没问题，那连血技是真的可以全程不带停的。不过这里需要注意的是，这种极端玩法是只考虑了叠 CD 的情况，但装备的其他属性就不一定对得上你的角色了。真要所有人的 CD 拉满，那刮痧估计也拉满了。可即便如此，减 CD 的装备依旧是本册向进阶打法迈进的敲门砖，就算不带满，减个2%。
It gives options though. That's what I love about it. It gives options.
25%50%啥的
Different ways to play the game, right?
战斗节奏产生质变，很多实战项的永控轴也都是基于大量的减 CD， 利用快速冷却的连血技来打出的。这也使得目前周末地的战斗资源它其实不是少，而是偏，而且是全偏到点连血技 CD 的装备上去了，导致在新玩家意识到这个东西能改善自己的游戏体验之前，那他的战斗体验。
Okay, this is like where again though. Smart kit design for new characters can mitigate this without having major changes to the game, right? You can have characters and gear that really leans into doing that, but then you can bring kits out that mean this isn't necessarily needed, but the character's built in a way that allows that without that potentially, or offers a different way to play the game that doesn't reduce it down to feeling a little bit less than. Again, I keep saying this, right? It's all about that fine balancing, right? It's I think with the game that's designed like this, right, that really potentially does have a lot of complexity to it and a lot of nuance to it. I think it's going to be hard to achieve, right? It's going to be hard to achieve, because it will kind of, if not done right, it will lean into everything becoming, you know, it being like, you know, kind of like speed builds in a sense, right? And then everything else will be kind of left out of the meta in a sense. It's a tough one, but I do think I think maybe this is where it's a meet in the middle position, maybe. The more I think about it. What do you guys reckon on that? So if you consider the company as play best, mastering offset attack is less scale. Are we talking about worlds? Yeah. It's fundamentally, you know, anything that adds QLL people consider necessary essentially pay to win. It's fair. This is where I say, like, if kits come in that kind of potentially negate that, but don't negate it necessarily in the way of skill chains, maybe. It just offers up a different way to play. But then this, I suppose it would mean fundamentally, I guess, a design change, I suppose, in progress over the game, right? So you're not wrong. I'm just trying to like process my idea of like how that could work without being that, because you are right. If a character comes in and it means, oh, you don't necessarily need that with the gear, then it is kind of like an option that's like a QOL behind a character, right? But if there's an option there that you can easily do that through gear, I don't know. There's quite a few things you think about in the game that are quite complex, right? They're not just easily fixable things, right? That are they? You know, where it's like, let's just do this and it fixes the situation. I think that there are things that are. This is like, maybe when you think about it, these little things that seem like little things are actually quite invasive, I guess, in the way the game would be played, right? And we play the game and it feels great. It feels great, right? Then it's like, these are potential issues that could really snowball into big problems later on. And this is why I suppose it is good. You know, we joke all the time about the game coming out tomorrow and the beta coming soon and getting it out as fast as possible. But we want these things to be tweaked, right? We want these things to be locked in, right? You know? It's pretty simply, there's a reason player base tended towards Arknight and CD reduction sets. It's true. It's true. A lot of people did really lean into Arknight. You saw a lot of the gameplay that people were using were doing that for going for the cooldown. What do you guys reckon would be a potential solution then for that? Because, like, you know, obviously he's probably going to get into that in a second because he's tended to for a lot of the stuff. But what do you guys think now? Let's like think about ideas in trying to lean away from the cooldown reduction. Do you think it needs to be more intrinsically linked skills themselves that offer up a different way to it not necessarily being around cooldown, but allowing the same kind of outcome at the end? You know? Gear might be an option, but it will be difficult thing to implement. Imagine adding animations on top of existing models to accommodate for new gear set. Yeah, that would be a problem. Like, we've, you know, obviously with the essence slots and stuff, but then we're leaning into an RPG element, an RNG element, right? Because that's where the RNG is in the game, right? Is your weapon essence slots. That's what they're called, right? The essence slots, right? But then you're still kind of going down the path, but you're just doing it in an RNG factor, right? People want to spend their resources. It's a fundamental change that people need ways to generate resources. Well, we've seen now with things like, maybe this is why they're leaning into stuff for like the dodges, but is it like that the right way to go, right? Since slow-mo can help people, otherwise it would be too complex. Among skilled players, and what about more casual? Improved base SP generation, which they kind of already did. We've seen that, right, already. Like, it looks like the perfect dodge is going to be a thing that increases. We didn't really see anything else other than that. This is why it'll be interesting to see when we get our hands on it again, right? Because that China Joy gameplay, they specifically went out of the way to avoid doing that perfect dodge, right? Until that one particular incident. Because if you watch it, a lot of the times, you know, when you got that little red circle coming, they're backed out, right? They're backed out. It'd be interesting to see how not just like SP regeneration, how they're working around this in regards to skill chaining and stuff. If there's other ways, other elements, other options they're offering up for it. It doesn't have to be just increase SP regen rate. It can be things like chain. Yeah. Hypergryph found by Yosa and Sunborn. Quick search shows that. Creative. Okay. I think the problem is more about the combo skills having long cooldowns without gear rather than slow SP gain. Reward thoughtful gameplay. Yeah. Again, this is where potentially, when you think about it, does that where the slow-mo comes back into offer? I don't know. I do think you're right, though, that thoughtful proactive gameplay is the way to go about it, because then that brings in the tactical side of things, right? Because it's going to reward you more options by playing in a bit more of a thoughtful, sensible, forward-thinking kind of way, right? Of tackling things with the idea of, right, this is what's going to happen. This is how I approach it, kind of how you do in Arknights. No, it's a different game, rather than wait for the enemy to do a thing, then let me do a thing, and then be in a position of like, oh, I'm out of resources now. The fight slows right down, because then you don't want that, right? You don't want to be in that position where you're constantly having a fight slow down and be in a position of like, shit, let's wait for things to go again and then get back into it. That's definitely not something you want. Yeah, but slowdown can increase the skill ceiling for the game, and if they aren't comfortable with it, they can ignore it. I'd rather a perfect combo than a perfect dodge. Say using a combo is in the right situation enhances that combo. Turn an enemy combo into a sniper skill. Yeah, this is one that I think, are we able to offer up the solution? Let's see what he's got to say, because he might have a solution here. And his solutions in other parts of the videos or ideas or offerings have been really quite thought-provoking, actually. So I'm curious to see what he's got to say here. But I think this is a difficult one. This one is, in terms of the combat, I think is probably more important than anything to do with a dodge, right? In my opinion. This is like fundamental to how the combat is going to feel. And if combat feels rough, then it doesn't matter how strategic it is, right? How it's not supposed to feel like action. If it feels rough, it doesn't matter whether it's action-based or strategic-based, it feels rough, right?
就依旧是打完上套没下套的。那这怎么说呢？你与其像现在这样所有人都盯着减 CD 的装备去研究，还不如干脆让那几个20秒、30秒长 CD 的连携技角色统一降低 CD， 让玩家在初期研究配对后就能感受到连携。
I suppose that sounds like a simple, but like, would it really like solve that issue as you get further into the game? Or is he just thinking like, oh, if you learn this at the start, then you'll learn that that's where to go. But then it becomes restrictive still, doesn't it? The overall design, because it's like, right, this is the way to go. Like in a particular game, speed. Yeah, you want defense. Yeah, you want attack, and then you win kind of thing. You know what I mean?
并减少装备 CD 加成的幅度，使其变成一个可选项，而不是必选项。当然，即便这样，战斗的侧重点依然是在连携技上，所以如何平衡其他的战斗资源，以此避免连携技的一家独大，也是制作组需要考虑的事情。那么，除了给普攻、闪避这些增加额外的能量回复渠道外，是否可以增加能量条的上限和回复速度，或是回调成1层那样，让各个角色的资源独立，亦或是利用我们前面提到的道具改动。
See, I didn't experience that, so I can't really like comment on that. I think like if everything gains SP though, like SP kind of loses like a little bit of its, I guess, its strategic element as well, right? If everything gains it. Yeah, this is one for smarter people than me, honestly.
比如说打连招时没能量了，磕个能量药，敌人在蓄力，但我没能量了，掏炸弹来破蓄力。
This is one where it's not necessarily I'm too dumb to get it right. It's more that I just need to be like hop on the game right now and be like, okay, you know what I mean? Like the proof's in the pudding kind of moment. It's sometimes it's hard to reflect back on something that you played months ago and remember how, because like a lot of times in games, right, you can look at fundamental things on paper and go, that's a problem. You need to be in the moment, right? Experience it. I feel like I'll tell you what, Hypergryph, we'll fix this. Roll the game out, right, in beta. Let us have a little fiddle. And we'll get you some ideas, right? We'll get you some ideas.
不小心乱轴了，元素反应没打上，靠元素炸弹来弥补。总之就是通过增加其他资源的手段，提升游戏策略和操作上限，并稀释连携技过于离谱的存在感。那么在战斗资源外，就还有一个与其息息相关的内容 BOSS 战。简单来讲，就是当你学习配对、主动排轴，利用减连携技 CD 打出各种控制轴，虐得小怪原地动弹不得，准备去和 BOSS 一较高下时，你立马就会发现这 BOSS 可怎么不吃控啊？目前的几个 BOSS 打起来突出的就是一个拒绝交互，要是都像3位一体这样，本身打起来就很有团本那味儿的，交互少点也无伤。
Yeah, I've said this. I want more of that. I want that like raid-like experience. I've been saying this since Wuthering Waves, right? Do you know Wuthering Waves actually had boss mechanics initially? They were very basic, but like it did. Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with
大
that.
呀，但其他那几个高性能多动症的怪，除了打断对面的蓄力技外，其余战斗就真的是各打各的了。但很显然的是，在当前这种环境下，要是 BOSS 真吃控制，那各种永控、半永控轴高低得给 BOSS 安排上，甚至很有可能出现依靠极端减 CD 打出的新手都能学会的永控逃课。那制作组自己肯定也是知道这种情况的可能性，所以给所有 BOSS 和高档精英怪都安排上了全程霸体，以此避免玩家这种一力破万法的行为。那这就是制作组自己造的孽，自己又一刀切了。那就还是我上面说的那样，把连血技减 CD 带来的战斗上限稀释到其他的战斗资源里去，保留永控上限的同时增加永控达成的难度。这样一来 BOSS 也没必要再是全程霸体，改换成什么霸体是 BOSS 技能的一部分啊， BOSS 有100%控制减免啊，
Yeah, 这个
有不同的控制抗性啊等等，给予玩家可操作的空间，这不比现在全程无脑免控要体验好得多。那么到这里，本次的战斗部分就全部讲完了，我也终于可以来回答一个社区里炒得非常火热的
Oh, see, it was the hot controversial topic what we were going to be talking about here then. I wonder what we're going to be talking about here
问
then.
题，那就是周末地是否应该删除闪避。很显然，这么一圈讲下来，我的答案也非常明显，那就是完全不用。
I agree with this. I agree with this. Right. You guys have seen me, right? Not to keep bringing it back to Tolbro, but that's kind of where a lot of this conversation has been focused. I agreed with these overarching ideas in the video, right? A lot of people didn't like the way he went about it. Whatever. Everybody's got a different opinion on that. But the actual, the argument of this change could affect the whole idea of where we're going. I get it. I disagree necessarily. I think that's what's going to happen, but I understand the worry. And the worry's a real worry, right? It makes sense. But I was never a remove dodge person personally. Again, when I first played the beta, one of my main criticisms was the consistency of the dodge. And I even did mention ideas of throwing around the ideas of like a perfect dodge myself. I do understand the argument in regards to when we've got a dodge that becomes incredibly spammy, we're starting to then pull one step, you know, the removal of the slowdown out of a spammy dodge. You know, we're taking little steps, right? Little steps. And if, you know, 1,000 little steps add up to a long distance, right? But I agree. I don't think it's necessary to remove the dodge, right? I think a dodge can be perfectly incorporated into a strategic, tactical base game that doesn't feel like it's just purely, let me react, spam dodge constantly, and then kind of like neuters everything else. It's a worry. It's definitely a worry when you think about like defenders, and when we look at the enemies not specifically going after the main character. If you've got a defender out there doing the thing, what are they doing, really? If the enemy's targeting you all the time and you're just flipping around, you know, that is a worry itself. I don't think removing it fixes that, but I think this is where I said, I thought it was a valid conversation to have. A lot of people really didn't think it was. I think it's just because the conversation become bigger than it should have been, which I do agree is a thing. And I think it's good that we're moving on from that now. Oh, I do agree. I don't think it's necessary.
因为你与其讨论闪避是否会降低游戏的策略性，还不如去讨论为什么敌人的性能要做得这么高。而之所以制作组要给敌人的性能做高，其原因也非常简单，那就是卖相会更好。相较于敌不动我不动的排轴打桩，这种双方相互机动拉扯的战斗表现，怎么看都会更吸引路人玩家。这也是为什么制
He's right, right? You know, he's definitely right there.
作组连续2侧都坚持要做高性能敌人的原因，那既然要坚持高性能敌人，加入闪避让敌我性能对等，自然是非常正确的选择。对问题的核心从来就不在闪避上，而是在玩家的可用资源与可选策略上。毕竟闪避本身也不过是资源和策略的一环罢了。总而言之，作为玩家明面上讨论声音最大的部分，本侧在战斗的逻辑架构上比起上侧成熟了不少，可开放的上限也变得更高。但毕竟是半道重做了一侧，很多新增和改动的内容都不甚完整，更像是做一半就端上来，让玩家看看自己的思路有没有出错。这我只能说，好歹还是有优化和改动的，至少比工厂部分强。但它需要继续进行的优化和改动，那也是没比工厂部分少多少就是了。好了，那能看到这里的观众，我先给你。
Yeah, I think when I think about it, resources for the combat and some actual quite major changes or considerations, not so much changes, considerations for the base side of things, right? I agree. As I've said, I think having a dodge in a game doesn't remove strategy and tactics. It doesn't. It's a reaction-based thing, right? I don't think it does remove that, right? I think sometimes people just think, well, if I've got a reactionary based, timed, pinpoint mechanic in a game, then everything else doesn't matter anymore. I don't agree with that necessarily. Again, I understand the worries, but we really need to get a hold of this new dodge, don't we? You know, I had 12F to Endfield. I think when he was first started talking about the dodge, I was like, yo, bro, we got 12F, man. But we just need to get our hands on it, don't we? We need to experience it. But I do agree, fundamentally, the strategy comes from choice at the end of the day, right? Because without choice, there is no strategy, right? You can't have strategy without options. And this is why I keep harking back to this idea of more options, more choice, more ways to do things. You have to balance that and tie it all together, of course. And this seems like really simple stuff, but at the end of the day, without it, you ain't got strategy. A dodge doesn't remove choice, but the lack of choice removes the strategy. And this is why the resources, the cooldown side of things, that needs to be worked on, because then we have a choice. We have a choice between a poor version and a just blatantly better version, right? And not just a more efficient and better version, but a better feeling version. And then when you've got that, ain't nobody using that. And then there's just an illusion of choice at the end of the day, right? And an illusion of choice is just that. There's no choice. Again, I still think, you'll hear me harping on about this. I think a Gambit-like system could add so much as well in regards to choice. This doesn't change the cooldown situation, right? But it does offer and add another layer of options and choice and strategic variation in the game, right? At 12F to Endfield, tactic doesn't necessarily mean the dodge is redundant. Availability of dodge doesn't necessarily mean the lack of tactics. Truth always in the middle. Agree with that. Have the dodge 50-50 chance of proc 12F experience. What if they had dodge like how it is in ARPGs like Path of Exile? In what how would you exactly implement that? What's your idea of implementing that into this, then, Rasanju? I'm not sure exactly how you would think that would work in this. Hit me up, let me know. I'm curious. I hope the gacha is fair in this game like the original Arknights supposedly is. If it's anything like it was in the beta, it's a pretty good system in my opinion. We're no longer the target audience, and I lament that now because I perceive Monson to be another fast-paced action game and only see a fast-paced action slot when it wasn't. And more uniqueness of each class system, uniqueness of each weapon type, and uniqueness of gear selection. Yeah, agree. This is where, like, I think they need to lean into the class kind of thing, right? And then a Gambit system on top of that class system would be fucking sick. He was just joking, by the way. Okay. I'm open for all ideas. That's why I'm like, how would you implement that? I'm not too sure. And more uniqueness. Yeah, I've just read that. Why would I play Monson if I get the same experience playing God Eater? Man's most powerful ability is choice. An NPC in PO2 chose a name I don't remember. An aggro system. I definitely do think defenders need to be like, they need to be like, again, this is where I go to like Final Fantasy 12, right? You set your units up to do that, to heal a particular, because like we've kind of, in a sense, there's like a watered down, partially added Gambit system in the game, right? With, the healing items, the way once you get to certain things, it triggers characters to use the healing items, right? That there, for me, is where we need to push in with like getting characters to do particular things, pushing up to the front line when certain things are happening. The character that you're using is down to a certain amount of health. Characters begin to do stuff. Haunting enemies, attacking specific enemies in specific ways. You're focusing on this particular enemy. You can have units going off and targeting mobs because you've got your Gambit system set up in a particular way. So when you've got a fight with lots of ads, your AI units are fighting it in a particular way because the fight's tailored to that. And then when you're dealing with one big heavy hitter, you can switch to a different Gambit preset. So your AI team works in a different way to facilitate a more, I guess, enjoyable fight in that scenario. A different fight, if you will. Again, it's come back to the choice thing, right? The thing is, a game for everyone is a game for no one. Well, I don't disagree with that. The problem is if a new option becomes too powerful or the focal point of the devs make the game around it, like how magic classes are strong in Elden Ring, but the game doesn't revolve around them. Oh, of course, yeah. This is why, again, it sounds cliche, right? But balance is, and I think even more so in a game with a combat system like this, the balance has to be like, it's a fine line, man. It's a fine line. There is no longer anything I perceive as special or unique to the games because I know it plays like something else that already exists. What do you, I suppose, like, I guess, you, like, looking at this, you could argue, like, you know, Xeno and, like, Final Fantasy, I guess. I still feel like, at least in this space, in the gacha space, I feel like this game feels, I suppose it's hard to be unique nowadays, but it feels like it differentiates itself enough from a lot of the competition for me to feel worth itself in that, right? They literally have the receipt for class system for the OG Arknights, and yet Endfield class system is so shallow that it hasn't served any purpose yet. Remove iframes and I'm happy with dodge. There are people who introduced, once Hunter said no to, that's been 10 years. Okay, alright.
你们点个赞，然后
And that wraps up.
So is it a part 3?
There's still a few more of flyk case review left, which it will be in part 3. The part 3 will mainly focus on character progression, gacha related aspects,
Okay.
and a few other areas flyk haven't touched on yet. I'll try to get to it as soon as
You're
I
talking
can.
about, yeah, I was confused then. I was a little bit like, I'm not too sure what we were on about there, but you're on about Monster Hunter. Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Assuming I don't get too distracted by the lore of some other games again.
Yeah, you better not, bro. I'm waiting for part 3 now. When the fuck, this came out 6 days ago. Where the fuck is part 3? Has he done it yet? Get on it, bro. I'm gonna subscribe. Get on it, bro. Get that shit in. I need to see that. Okay. Another great video by Fly, right? Another great video. Again, I'm thinking about answers to questions that I didn't even pose before, right? I guess, like, I think for me a little bit with this beta, right, is I was so wrapped up in having so much fun. I wasn't fundamentally, and sometimes it's hard when you're live streaming, right? It is hard. I got a lot of respect for people who can live stream and really consider systems in games, right? It's something that, like, I definitely, when the game comes out, I am going to be having a lot of I'm going to be streaming the shit out of the game and making content, but there's going to be a lot of times that I'm interacting with the game off stream, so I can really start to have these, you know, these conversations with myself, and start making content around this sort of stuff as well when it drops. Because yeah, these 2 videos have been quite an eye opener actually. People were saying that there was, like, you know, it'll change the way you think about things in the game, and I was like, yeah, all right. Not gonna lie, kind of has. Both videos have actually. You know, I never really looked at the, I suppose it's because the way I was building my team and I was just, like, having fun playing around with the skill chains and stuff. I do think that's an element that needs to be looked at, right? Again, I'm past the dodge conversation, right? I do think it was a fundamentally philosophical point to argue around, but mechanically, in the game, I don't think it's that big of an issue, really. It might be for some, but for me, it's not, right? And we've all got our different opinions. I do think there's some stuff within the construction, though, that I think the base building, you know, definitely needs to be worked on. And in the combat as well. I do believe Hypergryph are going to get to the well, we hope, right? They're not infallible. We've got to remember that, right? We're all fans of Arknights here, I think, and we're all fans of Endfield who've played it. We're looking forward to it. We're excited, and we know there's a good developer working on it, right? But we've got to remember they're human. They're prone to mistakes. This doesn't mean this game is going to come out and everything is going to be fine. And we've got to accept, I think, what's going to happen with this game, right? I think on launch, we're going to get a game that runs great. I think we're going to get a game that plays great and feels great. I think we're going to get a game that's going to have some teething problems. And I'm talking in systems, mechanics, and the interconnectivity of things, because this game's got a lot of working parts that feel like they're separated, but they have to work together, right? And I think it's gonna be there's gonna be some stumbles. And I think we've got to accept when this game launches, right, that we're gonna be getting there, right? I think we're gonna be getting there. And it's gonna take a couple of patches, I think, before we do, right? Which I'm willing to have happen, right? I'm totally willing for that, because I think at the end of the day, there's part of me in a way, this is the kind of game, and I know this sounds it sounds a little bit arsehole backwards in a sense, right? There's a reason why you have early access games, right? And I think this is one of those games that kind of needs that. And I'm not saying it needs to launch in early access, but it needs the vast amount of numbers coming into the game to really start to see how the problems can be solved and where we're going, right? I think that's kind of what we need. I think the game needs an early access in a sense, and the game gets fixed as we go, because I think a lot of these issues, it's such I think there's so many moving parts personally. Now, I might be totally wrong here. I think the community needs to be a big part of it, honestly. I really do. So we definitely need another beta. We definitely need another beta, I think, now we think about it, right? I've just been on the copium of, I want another beta, but I think we need another beta. I think Hypergryph needs another beta, and Hypergryph probably needs an open beta. Everybody gets access. It's on console, it's on mobile, it's on PC. Get as many people into the game, get as many differing opinions, get as many people potentially cheesing systems, exploiting systems, so they can then be like, you know, we can start to find a middle ground kind of thing for everything. And I'm not saying the players themselves necessarily have the answers, but hopefully players' actions and the way players play the games offers up the pitfalls and the potential fixes maybe going forward. I don't know. I'd love to know what you guys think though. Let me know in the chat right now as well, and let me know down below in the comments, because these will be going up, both videos. I will follow up with a third version as well, because I think these are incredibly good videos to have a look over if you're looking forward to Endfield and you're interested about the whole situation, and as a way to get past a very big sticking point in the conversation of the game and start to talk about other issues that need talking about. If we focus on one issue, you know, Hypergryph might then think that these are not issues that genuinely are issues, and this is good to be doing. This is really good to be doing. So shout out to Loss for uploading this and translating it, and shout out to flyk as well for making this. I'm assuming this went up on Billy. Really good to see, and hopefully we get more of this. But anyway, yeah, let me know what you think down below, guys, and yeah, drop a like, sub, all that good stuff if you've enjoyed it.